one of those barroom scenes in the cowboy movies. You know, people go fly
Right.
the window.
Chairs everywhere.
So, Hare Krishna.
Before we get started, I want to just
Maybe actually we can get. Yeah, we can.
I'm so grateful to have all you guys here. This is a nice, massive turnout. This is our 2-year anniversary for us coming together and sharing bhakti and community. I'm so grateful to have all of you guys here. I can't believe it's already been 2 years. And to top it off, we have some cupcakes by Radhika a little later.
You can put this back on the table. Then you can see you better. Yeah, that's much better.
And then to top it off, we have His Holiness H.D.Goswami, Howard Resnick, who has who's come from many distant lands. He travels all around the world. The thing about Marge is that he became a part of the Krishna conscious movement back in 1972.
69.
69. So
Dating myself, but
1969, and he took a vow of celibacy to become sannyasi in 1972. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And there's just so many wonderful accolades we can speak about Marge, but just to give you a few things, he has a PhD in Sanskrit. He's fluent in 7 languages. He's authored 2 books. He's working on a 3-part series book, Mahabharata. And it's 30 years of research and experience it's going into this 3-part book, and it's going to be incredible. It's going to be I personally think it's going to be the best version of what you've seen in the Mahabharata. And he's here to share with us tonight about the power of positive conflict. And so this is an interesting subject.
So yeah, we're going to actually have a fight here to show.
And the lights out. So without further ado, I'm really grateful to have Marge here.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Why don't you introduce, is there anything else you want to say about the topic tonight? Or?
Yeah, maybe,
Yeah, because what you just told me.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I bring up the word conflict, the first thing that comes up is a little bit of tension, a little bit of like a separation of understanding another person's perspective. So conflict creates a distance between people. And most of us think of conflict in a negative way. But to me, conflict actually can provide solutions. It can take processes and projects and different perspectives of people and allow to make holes in those plans or projects or perspectives so that we can make that perspective more stronger. We can develop stronger relationships. And to me, the power of conflict actually develops a stronger bond when it's used in a positive way. And so we're going to kind of explore today a little bit about what the power of positive conflict, how it not only reflects in our regular relationships, devotional relationships, and how it actually affects maybe the whole trend of our history. Sometimes, there's many times in our history where conflict has not been used. And what I'm looking for is when you're not having conflict, it's more of a consensus. Everyone is consensual. Yeah. And in that state, to me, I believe that a lot of things that could have been said or should have been said, perspectives that have been held in the heart are not expressed. And so a lot of deeper problems can actually come from the lack of using positive conflict. And so Marge is going to go a little bit into what that's about today.
Thank you. Thank you, Vasu. So, here we go. Actually, which is one of the most popular words in the Hare Krishna movement, actually. I like to start a discussion of a particular word or concept by going to the dictionary. So I'm going to look up conflict. So conflict in the Google dictionary, which is probably one of the worst English dictionaries on earth. But anyway, it says a serious disagreement. A serious disagreement, because for example, if I say I thought the pizza was good and Basu says, yeah, it was all right, that's not really a conflict. Because hopefully, anyway. So a serious disagreement, although you didn't say that.
I didn't say that.
I don't want to get him in trouble. I think he liked the pizza. So a serious disagreement or argument, typically a protracted one, which means it just goes on and on. Interestingly, the example I give in this dictionary is the eternal conflict between the sexes. Don't kill the messenger. So, and also it can be, obviously in a more egregious sense, a prolonged armed struggle, overseas conflicts, a condition in which a person experiences a clash of opposing wishes or needs. You can have an internal conflict. And that's something we have to talk about also, because I think a person who's growing, who's healthy, has some degree of internal conflict. I'll just say a word here to jump into the topic, because, well, to be honest, last definition here, an incompatibility between two or more opinions, principles, or interests. There was a conflict between his business and domestic life. So conflict can mean just two things that somehow don't go together. So I am a fan of dialectical thinking. And of course, this was probably popularized in Western philosophy by philosopher Hegel, and then his famous student, Karl Marx. Let's not shout out for Karl Marx. It's interesting, I just want to throw this in, little anecdote, that if you go to typical universities nowadays, which tend to be very liberal, not everybody, of course, but it's still somehow okay if you, for example, have a sickle and hammer. Yeah. It's still, most people are going to think, wow, you're kind of really 20th century, but still you can do that. You can have a sickle and hammer. If you go, let's say, on a typical college campus with a swastika, with a circle around it, as in the old German swastika, probably people won't like you. So, but what's interesting is, historically, the communists or Marxists actually, in the 20th century, killed more people than Hitler. That's a historical fact. If you look at Stalin, Stalin was sick beyond what's in any textbook, I think. And Stalin killed, we're talking about tens of millions of people. Tens of millions. And of course, Chairman Mao, who was deranged in China, and killed tens of millions of people. So the communists actually killed more people than the Nazis. But anyway, that's interesting, isn't it? But you don't hear that oftentimes in certain circles. So, but in any case, so I got off into that tangent because we were talking about the dialectic. So I'll explain what the dialectic is in its classical formulation. And what Marx did with Hegel, but that's not so interesting. A dialectic means, the idea is that the way history moves forward. To understand why Hegel came up with this, you have to understand that we're actually going to get to conflict, but I'm trying to put it in historical perspective. It's hard to exaggerate the effect that Sir Isaac Newton had on the world, because the way I put it is, before Newton and his physics and all that, really people in the Western world really lived in Middle Earth. I mean, there were trolls under bridges, and there were like all kinds of spirits and everything. In other words, they were like kind of like devotees. So, but they like this sort of this magical. They really lived like in a Harry Potter type world. And then when Newton showed that actually the world is rational and there are laws, and which was an older classical idea. I mean, I will get to the topic, but it's just, I just find this fascinating. I mean, the old classical idea of the Stoics going back thousands of years in the classical world was that God is a supremely rational being. Not only is he merciful and all powerful and he can beat you up if you really, irritate him, but actually God is a supremely rational being. And they called this rational power of God the logos, from which we get words like logic and the logos of everything. So, for example, the logos of the earth is called geology, the logos of geo, the earth, or the logos of life, a rational explanation. And the Greek word for life is bios, so that's biology. Don't know much about biology. Anyway, so the idea was that because God is a supremely rational being, that when he creates the world, he creates a rational world. So if you study any aspect of this world, like psyche in Greek, they spelled psyche. I mean, we would say psyche was the mind or conscious. So the science, the logos of consciousness is psychology. And so if you study any aspect of the world, you find this reason, this divine reason, because the creator is supremely rational. And the logos, therefore, is also in us. So it's this idea, and that's really, to use the common phrase, where I'm coming from. I really see the world that way. I mean, I realize there's all kinds of, you could say, supernatural, amazing spiritual things going on. But ultimately, even at the level of the supernatural, which in a sense in Greek, the Greek word for supernatural is metaphysical. Metaphysics. So that's pure Greek, metaphysics. So the idea is we can make sense of things. We don't just live in a magical. There's a difference between mysticism and a magical world. A mystical world means there are things beyond the material, but they obey laws. They're rational. They're logical. Whereas a magical world means it's just there's no logic. Like, for example, in Harry Potter, let's say, for example, if you take the hair of a raccoon and sprinkle some vinegar on it and then toss it over your left shoulder while chanting "Ooga Ooga," then, your wicked stepmother will slip and break her hip or something. And so, and it's not related to anything. It's not that, okay, that's because vinegar has this property and the hair of a raccoon has it. There's no logic. There's no consistent rules or laws. It's just magical. So a mystical world is rational, whereas a magical world is non-rational. And so just the last thing, then I'll get to the point of conflict, that because in the ancient world, the ancient Greco-Roman world, this notion of a supremely rational and merciful God and ultimately a rational, understandable creation was so popular that there was this small new religious movement that was trying to attract intelligent people, trying to make intelligent devotees, so to speak. And so they wrote a book a few generations after their founder died, in which they were trying to attract educated people. And so they began it by saying, in the beginning was the logos, which we translate the word. In the beginning was the word. But actually in the Greek, it's in the beginning was the logos. It was an attempt to try to appeal to educated people in the Greco-Roman world. So anyway, so going to the dialectic. So when Newton, that was part of in a sense, Newton was helping people in the West to get back to that rational picture of things, that we don't just live in a magical Middle Earth. The universe is actually obeys laws, and you can study it, and you can understand it. And so in the Western world, there was this tremendous enthusiasm to find the logos of everything. And that's why you've got geology, physiology, biology, sociology. Actually, they're so frustrated because they lost the astro word. Astrology went to the bad guys, and they just got stuck with astronomy. But anyway, so Hegel took on this ambitious project. He wanted to find the history of everything, the history of all human history, or the logos of all human history. Like, is there a science of all human behavior over thousands of years? Can you actually identify a science of human behavior? So apart from, I won't go into what success he had, but he concluded that things move dialectically. And then we'll get into the conflict thing, because the center of the dialectic is conflict. So you see, this was not an age-related space out. I actually had an idea where I was going. So the The dialectic, very simply stated, is this, that there is a thesis. And the thesis just means the way things are now, the status quo. And then something opposes that. There's a conflict. Something opposes that. It's just like, for example, let's say you live in a small town, you have the only shoe store in town. So you have a comfortable life. Then someone opens a competing shoe store. Now there's a conflict. So it could be anything like that. It could be a relationship where you think you've got a great relationship, you and your partner are really happy together, and then for no good reason you can find this person's not happy or starts to criticize you or whatever. Like that song, "You've Lost That Loving Feeling." You criticize little things I do. Anyway, it's a line from, I can explain our entire philosophy of Krishna consciousness in terms of 60 songs, but so that conflict, something that opposes the status quo, that opposes the way things are now, is called the antithesis, the antithesis. And ultimately, when two things are in conflict, so I'm creating a framework for our discussion. When two things are in conflict, eventually something happens. And people, like, wars don't go on forever, unless they're American wars. But I mean, wars. So generally, wars don't go on forever, or bad relationships don't go on forever, because people either make up or figure out a way to make it work, or they separate. And so therefore, when there's an antithesis, you have this conflict, eventually there's the synthesis. And the S-Y-N, which is Greek, and the Greeks pronounce soon, actually comes from Sanskrit. It's the Sanskrit S-A-N, sang, like Sankirtan. So just like Sankirtan means together kirtan, like everything, the kirtan with everything, everyone together, that's Sankirtan. So the Greek version of that was S-Y-N. So the synthesis just means the thesis of everything coming together. Another example you can look at it is the conflict that happens when a powerful river finally, goes into the sea. And there's salt water in the ocean, then there's this powerful river water. For example, the Amazon is so powerful, it's said that you can still drink the waters, fresh water, for like, I don't know what it is, 50 miles out to sea or something, from the mouth of the Amazon River. But eventually you get the synthesis. These waters mix and you get a new reality, which came out of this conflict. So basically, Hegel said that that's the way history moves forward. And as we know, things don't always get better. Sometimes things get worse. And so you made that point, a good conflict. And so you could say conflict is inevitable and so why is conflict inevitable? And there's some obvious reasons for that. Number one is that we're all individual souls. We're all unique. Krishna made all of us unique, as opposed to making all of us identical. I mean, he has that industrial capacity. Krishna could have made us all the same, but that would be a very boring world. And so Krishna made us all unique. God made us all completely unique. Now that alone, you could say, would not guarantee conflict in the sense of a serious disagreement. But there's something else that gets added here. Not only are all of us unique, but as in the material world, in a material body, to some degree, whatever that degree is in an individual's case, to some degree, we are selfish. To some degree. Now, there is a pure state of the soul, and we want to get back to that pure state of the soul. But meanwhile, back on the material ranch, we are all works in progress. We're all works in progress, and therefore, to some degree, we're selfish. And to some degree, all of us want to have our own way, to some degree. And so, and people have different tastes because they're unique, because everyone's unique. And so therefore, the conflict is whoops, I was told, actually, what did I do? Oh, actually, I am on the screen. I opened another thing. I'm sorry. This is not narcissism at its worst. It's just that my media handler told me to make sure I was on the screen. So if you want to see that, come making a private appointment with me. So, so here we are in the material world. And it would be bad enough if we were simply a large collection of individuals, each unique, each with their own will, each to some extent selfish. That would already be a problem. But it gets worse, because human beings, or souls you could say, are both individual and social. They're both private, but they're also public. Because as we know, actually it's a little, is it? I guess it's all right. I'm just trying to, because I'm a little darker than I should be. That's good. So, human beings or souls in general, they identify with groups. Without society, you could not use language. The fact that you can understand and communicate in any language at all is only because of society. What computer simulations show, because they try to get computers that can have conversations with you, and whenever you call up a certain number and get a computer, you realize how imperfect that technology is. Hi, I'm a computer and I can understand complete sentences, just not the ones that you're going to speak. So, and the reason that after all these years, that technology is so important, because it turns out that ordinary human conversation is almost unimaginably complex. It's not only the words we say, it's the particular orders, the nuances, it's the tone of voice, it's even things like, hand expressions, and so on. So it turns out that what we take for granted, just kind of like, let's talk, is actually extremely complicated. Language is extremely complex. And so, and we can only do language, and we can only, because it gets to the point, like, how much could we understand? How much would we feel if we didn't have language? In other words, could you really develop complex emotions? Could you really develop deep relationships if you couldn't think? And could you think without language? Thinking itself tends to be verbal, tends to be, language-based. Because every time you learn a new word, it's a new concept. Like, for example, delicious or exquisite. I mean, delicious and exquisite are not the same. In some ways they're synonymous, but so if you have a large, whatever your vocabulary is, they're all concepts. And so it's not just that you already have the ideas in your head, you just need the word. It's the words are giving you the ideas also. And so I could give many other examples. I mean, the fact you can walk down the street and the odds are in your favor, you won't be murdered on your way home tonight, is because there's society. So I think in our modern world, some people in the world have gone way too far on the side of individualism, which is simply an illusion. It doesn't reflect reality. Reality is that there's a balance between our individual life and our social life, our private life and our public life, and our duties. We have duties to ourselves, but we have duties to society, because there's no free lunch. I mean, we wouldn't exist the way we are without society and their debts. And so the reason I mention this is because people identify with larger groups, such as their family, or their community, or their society, but what happens with these identifications is, if someone's not really in spiritual consciousness, or as we say, Krishna consciousness, there's an attachment. So, and the common verb that we use in the modern world to express that is to identify with something. I mean, that word is used all the time, like, hey, I can identify with that. But, if you think about what this word really means, it means that you take something on as part of your identity. I mean, if you look seriously at that expression, to identify with something, or you cannot identify with something. And so when people belong to a family, well, everyone does. When, you belong to a family, a bio family, My theological opponent's trying to sabotage this. So when you identify with a family, you really, I mean, as Krishna explains, Krishna talks a lot about this in the Bhagavad Gita, that when you become attached, because everyone's attached to themselves, like, numero uno, right? I mean, everyone has to look out for big numero uno, number one. And so when you, just as we are all to some extent self-centered, we all look out for ourselves. We all see the world with ourselves as the center. And so when you literally identify, say, with the family, then somehow that family, including you, becomes the center of reality. The only problem is there's millions and millions of other families that think they are the center of reality. And then, of course, this gets kicked up to, let's say, national levels, like, I'm an American, or someone, je suis français, so I'm French, or, whatever people think they are. Or they say in Mexico, viva la raza, right? So you get nations. Fortunately, we have a president now who, doesn't do that stuff. He's very internationalist in the sense that he wants to exploit everyone. But that's what happens. So you get this us and them mentality, and you get conflict. Because let's say you go to a party. I mean, I'm thinking back when I used to go to parties. It's funny. I used to go to parties in Cheviot Hills and Beverlywood, because that's where I grew up. And when Prabhupada was there, I used to go with Prabhupada to walk in Rancho Park, and I would literally sit in the car with Prabhupada driving right past the houses where I went to parties, and it was like, wow. Yeah. So anyway, let's say you're at a party, and you want to be, let's say you're trying to get the attention of a particular person that you find attractive, but someone else is trying to get that person's attention. Or maybe I just want attention in general, and there's other people that want attention. There's all that tension of people competing to get the approval and the admiration of other people. And so what happens is, I'm trying to lay the foundation for conflict. So there is in postmodern thinking, which isn't all bad, they make this distinction between, not distinction, but they talk about objectifying someone. That's a pejorative term. To objectify someone doesn't mean to see them objectively. It doesn't mean that. It means that every one of us is actually a subject. Every one of us is the center of our own life. Every one of us is a conscious subject. But if I'm so vain or so self-centered that I see you not as another subject, that you are the center of your own life, I see you as an object of my life. In other words, what can you do for me today? And whether, I want to get money from you, or someone may want to get just attention or sexual favors, or whatever someone wants, or power, like vote for me. So in other words, you don't exist for yourself. The ultimate purpose of your life is not to pursue your own well-being. The ultimate purpose of your life is to serve my interests. And that's what's meant in that sort of that modern discourse of objectifying someone. And now we come to it. That's in a sense. And so when you have families, it's like our family is real. Like we're real people. And everyone that's not part of our family is sort of different degrees, sort of a descending scale of less real. So people who are, okay, you're not family, but we're really close. But you're not family. And then you get people, well, you're not family. We're just sort of like, as they used to say in England, nodding acquaintances. Or you're not family and I despise you, or or you're not family, I just don't care about you. Like every day in the newspaper there's an obituary column and people die, and it doesn't really emotionally affect us that much if we don't know the people. Oh, the famous English poet John Donne said, "Ask not for whom the bell tolls," that famous thing, because the bell tolling means that someone has died and there was a funeral and they would ring the church bells. So he said, ask not for whom the bell tolls. In other words, okay, who died? Because I want to know whether I should be concerned. I want to know whether I should grieve. So, it's just that person. Well, never mind. So in that famous poem, John Donne said, ask not for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for you and it tolls for me. And so we get to the point of empathy. The point of empathy. So if I identify the more strongly I identify with my own family, the stronger, let's say, the attachment, the more non-family is just somehow the less important other. They have less value. And what happens if you really identify with your country? Well, other countries, it's like every country for themselves. Like, okay, as our fearless leaders declared, yeah, of course we're trying to rip you off, and you're trying to rip us off, and it's just whoever made the best ripper win. Which is it's kind of like, it's a great picture of life, right? Very advanced picture of human life on Earth. So that's why, because and the more attached you are to one group, the more you hate. I mean, you really hate people who oppose that group. And so you can identify with your family, with your race, with your ethnic tradition, with your religion. That's a big one. In some parts of the world, wrong religion, sorry, I'm going to kill you. Nothing personal. You just are in the wrong religion. Or you're in the wrong branch of the right religion, which is also very common. And so there's more conflict among people. So just to throw in the line here, conflict can easily be resolved, or it can even be channeled into creative growth events if people do not lose their empathy. If people, despite the fact that we disagree, I still see you as a soul. I still see you as part of God. And according to Bhagavad Gita, in the entire universe, there's actually only one family, ultimately. Because Krishna, 3 times in the Gita, Krishna is referred to as a father. And the mother, by the way. Hashtag also the mother. So... So anyway, so actually we're all one family. And it's just like, let's say people who are not really seriously sick don't harm their own family. You don't injure or kill or just do something really bad to someone in your own family. Unless someone's really got problems. Why? Because a normal person identifies with their family, and if I injure that person, I'm injuring myself. It's like, that's why we take so much pleasure in the success of our, siblings or parents, because it reflects on us. Yeah, he's doing great. He made a ton of money, or yeah, she's doing incredible things, and that's my family. And so when you have that empathy, when you identify with other people, you want to think well of them because it reflects on you. Because you literally identify that person as part of of who you are. And so the real question is, what do we do so that everyone identifies with everyone else? And that, of course, is Krishna consciousness. You have to see things spiritually. And so among people who, like in a marriage, or I'm dating myself, let's say in a relationship, let's say 2 people in a relationship, and they don't forget that the other person is part of God. The other person is a soul. And therefore, sure, we disagree. If you think you're going to be with someone and not disagree, what planet are you from? So, but the point is, when people keep their understanding that this person is divine, this person is part of God, and I'm part of God, and therefore we're family. And I have to see that person through God's eyes. It's just like when you're a child, I had 3 brothers when I was growing up, and basically it was 4 uber alpha males. And so you could imagine what family life was like. I mean, everyone's fighting. And so, but it was a very close family. And our parents, I was very, very fortunate. I had very good parents. And so therefore, no one ever really injured anyone because you knew that, because the parents, they have this love for all their children. And therefore, you can't harm one of your siblings. And so when we see someone through God's eyes, through Krishna's eyes, in a sense, it gives us the freedom to have healthy conflicts, which brings us to the topic. Hey. So now, just to make sure no one asks for a refund, I'll talk about the actual topic. What does it mean to have a healthy conflict? And of course, I mean, in a sense, the first and most obvious answer, a healthy conflict is one in which both parties are actually growing and somehow growing into better lives. So, what would that look like? This is not going to happen among selfish people. This is not going to happen, even if one of the persons is selfish, it probably won't happen. It's not going to happen among very proud people. It's not going to happen among people who value getting their own way more than they value the honor of having that relationship. And so I would say in the case of relationships, not only conjugal relationships, two people get together, but even your friends. I mean, what kind of friends do you want in your life? And what kind of people do you want to work for, or have work for you, or have as your colleagues? What kind of partners do you want in different kinds of undertakings? And I would say because some conflict is inevitable, you have to look for people who are mature enough, spiritually mature enough, and mature enough as human beings and ethical enough so that when the inevitable disagreements arise, they place a very high value on sustaining the relationship and working together, cooperation. And, to use the cliche, when you get a lemon, make lemonade. And so you have to have two people. I mean, as far as I've seen, one person may be really good, but if the other person is just really not there, anyway. If you want to know more on this topic, I have a pay-per-view YouTube channel. I'm just kidding.
Really?
So anyway, I've thrown out some points. Maybe I would like to hear from all of you and like anything you want to ask about this. Yes, please.
Thank you, Acharya Dave, for being here tonight.
Thank you for coming. Shorty's my old friend. I mean, I've known her since she was born. Really.
Just a long time. But could you elaborate on the internal conflict and
yes.
growth mindset and that, when our duty, just more.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yes. Conflict, internal conflict is like salt or pepper. It's good in the right amount. And so because if you think about it, if you were literally, absolutely satisfied with yourself the way you are, you would never want to improve. You'd never want to grow. If you play a musical instrument, you think, I play perfectly. Then, so this gets back to the whole dialectic that, let's say the status quo or the thesis in the dialectic is just the way you are now on every level, spiritually, morally, artistically, socially, emotionally, everything, just the way you are. And I think an intelligent person, the person who's not just blinded by their own vanity, wants to improve, wants to be a better person. Because, it's not hard for any reasonable person to see that I could improve in many ways. And I would like to, because actually, to quote Bhagavad Gita and Pride and Prejudice, happiness actually comes from virtue. happiness comes from virtue, from your own goodness. So if I'm not a good person, nothing on earth can make me happy. And that's why my relationships won't last, because I'm thinking foolishly that even though I'm not a virtuous person, someone else is going to make me happy, which is absurd. I can only make myself happy by being a good person. And therefore, the better I become, the more virtuous I become, the happier I'll be. And therefore, real life, human life is meant to cultivate that virtue, because that's actually the source of happiness. That's actually the source of happiness. And there are these powerful verses in the Bhagavad Gita, 6, 5, and 6, which are what I call the most existential verses of the Bhagavad Gita. Because just very briefly, have you ever heard of existentialism? It was a philosophy that people used to have heard of back in the 60s. People like Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, Kierkegaard, actually, Nietzsche, who really needed help. But anyway, so the idea, I'll just tell you the story of Jean-Paul Sartre, this famous author. And this really tells you what existentialism is. Sartre was a young man during the Nazi occupation of France. He was in Paris. And what really disturbed him is that some French people, some of his country persons, men and women, seemed to be cooperating with the Nazis more than the absolute minimum, just so you don't get yourself shot or your family shot. I mean, to some extent, you had to cooperate, if, because getting shot can ruin your whole day. So, but he saw, So he saw people actually abandoning their individual moral responsibility. And he traced this to what he considered to be a very dangerous trend in Western civilization, which is psychological determinism. And I'll explain what that is. This course was a reaction to Freud. Because in this rage to find the science of everything, the nature of sciences are, a hard science like physics or anything is deterministic. That means, let's say, for example, I won't drop your cell phone, but let's say if I take this cup of water and we'll say I drink it, I don't pour it on the floor. As I drink it, then according to the laws of physics, the water is going to go at a certain speed into my mouth, depending on the angle that the glass is tilted, the pressure based on how much water there is, and so on. And so this can be precisely calculated. And the water and the glass, they have no choice. They can't say like, "Hey, give me a break. I'm not on right now. I'm not working now. Go get another glass of water." So the glass of water, because it's just a, so to speak, dead matter, it has to behave a certain way. If I tilt it a certain way, the water has to run at a certain angle, and it has to run at a certain speed, and for everything. So when things have to behave in a certain way, there's no free will. Like if someone pushes me and I fall forward, you could exactly calculate the rate, the speed that I'm falling, the impact on my body, and so on, because I have no control over it. When you have free will, you don't get a hard science. Obviously, I can't predict exactly what you'll do or say, unless you're just like ridiculously predictable. But a normal person, you can't always predict because they have free will. But with Freud, you see what Freud was trying to do in a sense, and this is what Sartre and many others thought this is like really dangerous. He wanted a hard science of the human mind. In other words, if we can really have a hard science of psychology, not the soft science we really have, what that means is that you don't have free will. You have to act in a certain way. And you see this trickle down psychological determinism, in your own life, when let's say someone speaks inappropriately to you. They speak in a way they shouldn't have spoken to you. And then they excuse themselves by saying, "You don't know what happened to me. You don't know what I've been through." In other words, based on what happened to me, I get a pass. I'm no longer morally responsible for the way I'm treating you. Because based on the way I grew up and based on the way I was treated, I have no choice. I have to act a certain way. as much as if I roll a ball, the ball has to roll at a certain speed because of the laws of nature. And so this psychological determinism where people imagine, of course, there is no such thing, but this is the idea that if we understood the human mind well enough, we could predict human behavior and emotions as much as now we can predict the speed at which a ball will roll down a hill. And of course, the obvious problem with this is that you're not morally responsible. You can go out in the street and shoot somebody and say, well, it's just because when I was a kid, blah, 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 and this happened and that happened. And so just one little word of advice from someone who's maybe roughly, an average of 11 years older than the people in this room, that, beware of relationships with people that believe in this, because they don't take moral responsibility for what they do. And that's how, and so Sartre thought the French in Nazi-occupied France are not taking moral responsibility for their actions because of this. And so the whole thrust of existentialism, where it's Kierkegaard or Nietzsche with his Übermensch, or whether it's Sartre or other people, is that you are responsible. You have to take responsibility for your life. You can't just abdicate your responsibility by talking about your childhood or talking about a bad relationship you had or talking about this. You're responsible, period. And that's very empowering. That's how you take power back in your life. You admit that you're responsible for what you do. And so the verses in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna talks about this is, actually, I have a Bhagavad Gita, I think, on my computer. And so for a slight additional fee, I am willing to... This is an add-on, by the way. I'm sure no one here... Oh, can't be opened because it's from an unidentified developer.
Just saying.
It didn't let me say yes. Do you have a Gita?
I do.
Okay.
Yours or?
Oh, yeah. Well, no, mine doesn't have Sanskrit.
Okay.
So, actually, I forgot. You can just go on Google now and just say Gita. Yeah. I said Gita 5.6, and I got an advertisement for women's sheepskin boots. Okay, here's the Gita verse. That's what the universe sent me, right? Oh, that's not. I gotta touch on that one, because I think human folly is hilarious. It's like Elizabeth Bennet in Pride and Prejudice says that. Well, Jane says that she's sort of a connoisseur of human folly. Like when you say the universe did this or the universe did that, I always think, like, what part of the universe? Do you mean like the plunger in your bathroom? Do you mean the third moon of Saturn? Do you mean what? Because to have will, like I do something, I consciously, intentionally do something, you have to be a person. So if you take the whole universe, it's a person, then the obvious question is, which person is it? Because it's not me. I don't have any asteroids in my body or anything. So who is the person who is the universe? Because rocks and water and empty space, they don't have intention. They're not conscious. And so when you say the universe consciously did something or sent something or showed you something, it sounds nice, but under scrutiny, it turns out to be gibberish. But par for the course in this age. So anyway, in the Gita 6.5, Krishna says, Udharet atmanatmanam, not manam of us. You're going to hear the word atma a lot. Krishna's doing this. And so in my translation, I kept the same, for the word atma. Do you have my book here? Yeah, could I have? I'll give it back. Comes to attach my book. So Atmaiva Hyatmano Bandhur Atmaiva Ripuratmana. Little infomercial here. Hi everybody. My name is H.D.Goswami. And I'd like to talk to you. So
really well written, by the way.
So this is in chapter 6. So the word Atma literally means self. It means self. It's even the reflexive pronoun. Like, for example, if you wanted to say self-service in Sanskrit, you'd say atma seva. So it's even like the word self there, self-service, self-done, self-made person. That's the reflexive pronoun, where the action comes back upon the person. So in Sanskrit, it's atma, so it means self. And so Krishna says here that one should uplift self by self. One should not degrade self. Indeed, self alone is self's friend. Self alone is self's foe. And I'm going to use the modern trendy word, unpack this. I never liked that. It always reminded me of suitcases. And so then 6.6 is Bandhuratmatmanas tasya jainatmaiva atmana jita anatmanas tu shatrutve vartate atmaiva shatruva. So again, the word atma is being used over and over again. So, and this translation is extremely literal. I did everything humanly possible to make it. So when you hear the English, that's what it sounds like in Sanskrit, if you're fluent in Sanskrit. Self is friend. Self is friend to that self, by whom self alone is conquered. But that very self can work as enemy due to non-self's enmity. And so, no problem there. Mm-hmm. So I'll explain what all this means. Going back to the previous, because these are the existential verses of the Gita. And let's see, where is it? Previous. So the first thing Krishna says here is that only you can literally uplift yourself. Udharet, one can uplift. That atmatmanasa, that only you can uplift yourself. And the self should not degrade the self. Don't degrade yourself. Lift yourself up. And then Krishna says that the self alone is self's friend. In other words, if a friend is someone that does good to you or for you, then ultimately, and this is not rejecting normal friendship, but ultimately in the highest sense, only you can be your true friend, because someone else can help you, but only if you let them help you, only if you know how to take help. And so ultimately you have to be your own friend. You have to uplift yourself. Only you can degrade yourself. No one else can degrade you. And then Krishna says in the next verse, we'll take this back to conflict, that so who is a friend to themselves? That's what Krishna says. What person is actually being a true friend to themselves? And it's the self that controls themselves. That actually, literally, the word in Sanskrit, it's not literally controlled, it's jita, which is the past passive participle from jaya, which literally means conquered. What does it mean to conquer yourself? It means that you have all these powers, you have all this beauty, you have this pure spiritual nature, you have this divine nature, you have a nature which makes you very much like God. I mean, with a small g. But we're part of Krishna. We actually have the same nature as Krishna. We have the same divine nature. We have abilities, powers, beauty that we can't even imagine now. We can't even understand it now. And yet, you can only access your own true nature, your glorious nature, if you don't run after something which is only going to degrade you. If we take the body to be the self, we are degrading ourselves. And of course, the modern world's obsessed with the body. And so who we really are is literally millions of times greater than the body. I mean, I'm not body bashing, or what's the word now? Body shaming. It's like, if you just even try to very gently suggest that people should be decent, you're body shaming them. So, but the idea is that it's like, let's say someone puts on a costume and someone thinks I'm King Arthur, or I'm, or I'm Queen Elizabeth I, actually, or I'm this or I'm that, and you try to gently tell them, can we talk about that? And, I think actually your name is Jane or Billy. And so why are you shaming this person? It's like, you're shaming them. Why are you, they have their own reality. First thing is we don't have our own reality. I mean, we do and we don't. We do have our own reality in the sense that each one of us is unique. And so what it's like to be you is something only you know perfectly, you and God. Because each one of us is unique. But in another sense, we don't have our own reality. There's been a war on objectivity. It's part of the postmodern cuckoo thing. For example, right now we're in Los Angeles. If you think we're in Detroit or on Jupiter, or you're just wrong. It's not, well, no, man, that's his reality, that we're on Jupiter right now. No, actually, we're on Earth. Or let's say you're driving your car, someone's not you, but someone's driving their car drunk, and there's another car in front of you. You think, no, I don't see a car. My reality is there's no car in front of me. Well, you'll probably, die as a martyr of your reality. So reality is a balance between subjectivity and objectivity. The world's not just subjective, and it's not only, you have your own unique reality, and you are part of the general objective reality. You got to stop at the same red lights. You got to pay your taxes. You have to respect other people's space. I mean, there are millions and millions of objective facts about the world that we all agree on, such as the English language. And so, do we have our own reality? Yes, within an objective universe. Everyone has their own way of being in an objective universe. And so conflict, again, but still, if there's a conflict, again, if you really respect the other person, if you understand that everyone is in a sense, on their own path. I mean, everyone in this room can chant Hare Krishna, but everyone is having their own unique experience. Everyone is on their own path. Everyone has their own relationship with Krishna, with God. And so to be unique and to have your own path, your own reality, is not war against objectivity. It's just your own way of being in an objective universe. And final thing about conflict, about good conflict.
Open up to some questions.
Yeah, more questions. And there's this great line from a great novel from the 20th century called To Kill a Mockingbird. Anyone ever heard of that? Mm-hmm. And of course, Scout is what's the name of the author? She died recently. I can't believe I forgot her name. Yeah, Harper Lee, of course, Harper Lee. Yeah, so and actually, she grew up in a town just like that. I mean, she really knew what she was talking about. And so her father is kind of like, the wise person in the story, Atticus Finch. And one day Scout, who must be, how old is she, 11 or something, or 12 or something, I can't remember. But anyway, so one day she comes home, she's complaining to her father because there's an older lady that lives across the street who's kind of eccentric, and Scout doesn't like her, the way she is. And then her father, this classic Southern wisdom, her father says to her, Scout, that's just her way. I thought, wow, that really impressed me. Scout, that's just her way. And so ultimately, if we see that everyone is sort of doing their best, but whatever they're doing, and some people take longer to evolve to get there, and you just sort of accept people the way they are. And then you just have to decide, is it compatible? If someone comes to you and says, I really want to change, help me, please, I beg you. Yeah, maybe. There's two kinds of people that want help and people that want attention. And so if someone is in the category of really wanting help and not just wanting perpetual attention, then you can help them. But if someone, even as a guru, Hare Krishna guru, if you want my card, just I'll beat any confirmed offer, by the way. So, even in the position that somehow Krishna placed me in, I don't really give unsolicited advice. I mean, it's your fault I was asked to come here and speak. But in my personal relationships, if someone doesn't ask me for help or advice, I really don't give it. I just respect people's right to do what they want. So I think in a relationship, you have to allow the other person just to be themselves. You can't make them with, and then you've got to figure out whether it's a match or not. But with mutual respect. So any other questions?
Yes, so questions.
Yes.
I don't have.
Hare Krishna.
I was thinking about conflict. Said the term good conflict.
Positive.
Positive conflict. I was thinking more about her question, inner conflict.
Yes,
in the
yes.
spiritual path. How do, when in the Bhagavad Gita it says, Pranipatena Sevayane, Hriday,
Upadeshanti.
Jnana Jnanina Tattva Darshana. So you have to put a certain amount of faith in your Guru and not come to a point where you still feel you have an inner philosophical conflict. So my question is, at what point do you maintain that for your spiritual progress, to still have that doubt or conflict? Let's say,
Right.
otherwise you're not growing spiritually. So
Right,
so
right.
And at what point do you fully surrender to the instructions of your spiritual master?
Very good questions.
Where
Yeah.
does that fall?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. Okay, first of all, that would be, I think, what you described, something like an intellectual conflict or philosophical conflict. And I would say there are two kinds. One kind of philosophical conflict can be just one still has doubts about the basic teachings of Krishna consciousness, and which in our tradition is called Siddhanta. Siddhanta means philosophical conclusion. So, for example, if someone may be wondering, is it really true that I'm not the body, I'm an eternal soul? Or is it really true there's a God? Or is it really true there's a personal God? Or is it really true that that I've had many past lives? So that would be a case where someone may have doubts about our basic philosophical framework. Now, there's also another kind of philosophical doubt, or I wouldn't even call it philosophical, and that is that within that framework of basic principles of Siddhanta, there are different outlooks among gurus. Gurus are different. For example, some of them are very conservative, some of them are very liberal. And to be perfectly honest, some of them know history and some of them don't. For example, real world. So, for example, one guru may say, oh, you don't need formal education, go to college. And some gurus may say, yes, please educate yourself. So, in terms of the conflict or the doubt, it depends on what level it's on. Now, in the Nectar Devotion, chapter 6, Rupa Goswami and Prabhupada make a very crucial distinction, which, unfortunately, to be very candid here, often is overlooked, and it's really a problem that is overlooked. And that is there are basic principles of spiritual life, of bhakti yoga, and there are details. And Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami both say very clearly that we have to agree on the basic principles, but the details may change. For example, how you should dress, or whether you should get married to a particular person, or your career, or all kinds of things. Or just there's all kinds of things which are just details. They're not basic principles. And so to think these are like let's say if I'm a guru and I'm really, really concerned with how my disciples dress, it's like, really? Maybe I should have become a fashion designer or something. But
Maharaj, does the conflict ever end? Do you come to a point where, because you gave it, I'm a musician, you give the analogy.
Oh, really? What do you play?
I'm a vocalist.
Oh, really?
Vocalist.
I play keyboard.
Oh, nice.
And sometimes we'll get together.
So I can understand from a music standpoint that that analogy is fine, but you never think you know it all. So therefore you're always growing. But in the spiritual sense, in the spiritual path, does that conflict ever end? Are you constantly just in conflict?
You mean with the guru or with yourself?
No, just understanding that your relationship with the Supreme Lord and
take your life as a musician, for example. I'm sure, like all serious musicians, you want to improve. For example, I play keyboard. I mean, not it's okay. It's enough. It's like a serious hobby. I can, I play classical music mostly. But if I listen to a concert pianist, I think, oh my God, like, and to me they're just like magicians, how they do this stuff. And so, so if I'm too obsessed with my own imperfections, then it spoils the music for me, because ultimately you play music because music is beautiful and because it's inspiring and it's therapeutic and it's all kinds of things and it's romantic. So if someone is just lackadaisical, there's like two extremes. I would say on any road you can go off either side. So there's a balance where you're not too self-critical, but you're not too self-indulgent. And that's really where you want to be, where you don't discourage yourself by being too self-critical, but you don't become shameless and self-indulgent by just, not really being honest with yourself and not being all that you could be and not developing your talent as much as you could. So it's that balance. And actually, if you think about it, either like, let's say as a musician or as a practicing bhakti yogi or as anything, I mean, when you know that I could do better and it's a healthy, balanced enthusiasm, it's encouraging. I mean, like let's say, like someone says, I want to be a great athlete. I'm going to the Olympics. Or I really want to master this particularly difficult piece of music. Or, I just want to be a better person. I want to be a much better friend to my friends. I want to be a much better person in a particular relationship. And so when there's a healthy desire to improve, and that's the good or positive conflict. It's the inner conflict between what I am now and what I could be and what I'd like to be. When it's the healthy amount, when it's a balanced amount, it's not discouraging, it's encouraging. When I get up in the morning, it's like another day. I'm going to take another shot at it. I'm going to do better today. And it's to me, that's life. Life, because every time you become better, whether it's better at music, better at sports, better at whatever you do, life becomes better. You like new possibilities open up. You know what I mean? It's like when you're playing music. Well, you sing. And so I know myself, reading music. I play mostly Baroque, but I'm a huge Baroque fan, which is roughly 1600 to 1750. The principal figures are people like Bach, Handel, Vivaldi, and lots of other really great composers. But, like let's say there are pieces I've been playing for several years. And then I finally get to the point where I'm not thinking about the technical part. I'm just really in the music. It's just like, I can technical part, I can do it. I don't have to think about it. And I can really go deeper and deeper into what the music is really saying. And so it's like, and so, yeah, there's a healthy amount and a healthy type of conflict, which inspires you to be all you can be. And again, if there's not enough of that, a person can become basically shameless and lazy and self-indulgent. And if there's too much, you just kind of destroy yourself. You beat yourself down. So it's that healthy amount, that balance.
Anyone else have any questions?
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
I'm still formulating it.
Samaj, you're talking about conflict, and then my question is kind of going upon more on this internal conflict.
Yes.
That internal conflict can lead us in a direction in our life to where we can improve and grow and expand not only ourselves but then the people around us. So conflict can actually be a process that can break down a current situation, a current state of being, maybe a specific idea that we have, and then perhaps maybe even improve it. So a lot of times when we're approached with conflict, the initial reaction for people can be either very, you can say, an aggressive, angry approach, where they can feel like they're taking it personally, or they can shut down and not actually open up and express or speak their heart. What is the balanced approach to being able to express yourself and at the same time not overwhelm the person or shut down their expression?
First of all, I think you have to be doing this with someone that wants to do it. I mean, I can't force someone or pressure someone to go through that process. And so, actually, if I get closer, maybe the light is better. So, I think it's also a question of being mature enough to recognize with whom you should and should not attempt this. Because some people it's like you just shake hands with them and it's like, ouch, don't do that to me. So some people are just, very sensitive or they're at a stage in their life for whatever reason, they're just not going to go there. And so you have to find people, like let's say you have a relationship with someone and you see a lot of value in the relationship, but you'd like to improve it. You'd like to have a better relationship, but the other person says, I'm not interested. I don't want to talk about those things. Or, then, of course, obviously you have two choices. Either what you see is what you get. Do you want, so is that good enough for you? Or if you think that I know that I'm capable of having a better relationship, I'd like to be with someone who really wants to work with me as a partner to reach the, certain levels of love or relationship, which are only possible when people really are dedicated to the relationship and are willing to do that. And so, yeah, again, it's compatibility. It's compatibility. Because when I was younger, I'm now going to attribute all faults to the youthful version of myself. Mm-hmm. Well, you hear H.D.Goswami?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
He's a great guy. Yeah. So he always says, I only made one mistake in my life. One time. I thought I was wrong, but I wasn't. I saw a T-shirt in San Luis Obispo that said, "I'm not perfect, but I'm so close. It's scary." So, when I was younger, I tried to change people, and I realized at a certain point, if some people want to change. Like some people, if you see if someone says, I want to go on that journey. I'd like to either learn what you're saying, or we can learn from each other, or let's develop a friendship and let's work. So it's a question of finding people that just have the same project as you. It's like if you're trying to build a bridge and someone else wants to develop their stamp collection, it's going to be hard to partner with them on those projects. So it's a question of just, oh my God. It's a question of, being with people that just, where there's a sufficient compatibility so you can do those things together. And so you don't frustrate yourself or frustrate other people or just, sort of set yourself up for big disappointments when, in retrospect, that couldn't work. So what was I doing? Of course, you want to give it a chance. You want to give it the old college try and all that. But, there's a kind of wisdom. Actually, where does that come from? Krishna says, actually, in the Bhagavad Gita, when I think it's the third chapter, when Arjuna asked Krishna, what is a symptom of someone that has real wisdom? And one of the symptoms is they know when to stay and they know when to go. That's actually one of the things that Krishna says. Yeah, one of the symptoms of wisdom is that you know when to stay and you know when to go. That's in the Gita, actually.
Can I ask a question about that?
No. Come on, you can do it. My old friend, Swargi.
So then, when to go? Like when there's too much conflict, or when you're constantly trying to improve yourself and maybe creating conflict,
right?
Or conflict is then
I know.
Or even if it's just internal, but it's like, how do you know then when you are overextending yourself and that maybe this is not the right moment in order to make that change, whether it's internally or with other people. But like, how do you know when to stop?
I'm tempted to say, do what I did, live long enough and suffer enough that you finally figure it out. But you've made every possible mistake, and then what's left is what you should be doing. I remember one time when I was a little kid, and I remember my father one day, he said, "Yeah, I went to the school of hard knocks." And so I would say also being open to good advice, and not all advice is good, of course. But it's really, I mean, if it's any consolation, I find it's wonderful, like getting older in life. I mean, not the soul, but the body, because it's just, if someone, is reasonably sincere and just tries to practice bhakti yoga, then, the peace, the tranquility, and kind of like the insight that comes with age, it's just so sweet. It's just so nice. And so in the meantime, if you don't have the good fortune of being old and decrepit, then plan B is, I would say pray a lot to Krishna. Really if we can just understand our own limitations, if we can just understand that we're little souls and there's a lot in heaven and earth that we don't understand at this point, then and be cautious. Not, obviously you can be too cautious and you can miss great opportunities. But I think it has to do with valuing yourself. Because I think if you take yourself seriously as an eternal soul, as part of God, and really take yourself seriously as a divine soul, then you'll be very careful with yourself. It's like, you see, in the neighborhood I live, you see mothers and, out with their strollers and the babies, and you just see, how much they love their children, how much care they take, and so you do have to love yourself, which is not vanity. That's another interesting point, right? I think this is related to self-conflict, is that the difference between self-love and just vanity and egotism. And so, and I think the difference is that when you understand that somehow Krishna, by Krishna's mercy, I am an eternal soul, and that is just the best possible thing to be, and to feel just unlimited gratitude for what you are. You can think highly of yourself. You should think highly of yourself because you are divine, but give the credit to Krishna in the sense of that somehow Krishna has manifested me as this infinitely valuable, eternal, divine being. And so the more you see what you really are, the more grateful you feel. Because when you see something great in yourself, it's like the fork in the road. There's the high road and the low road. The high road is gratitude. The low road is vanity. So we should see what we are as divine beings, but we should take the high road and feel grateful that somehow Krishna is allowing me to be this spiritual being. And the more you love yourself in that way, because if you see yourself through God's eyes, you will love yourself. The real way to have self-esteem is not just this mindless vanity of the modern age where everyone is great and everyone is wonderful, even if they're the opposite, just materially. But if you see yourself through God's eyes, because Krishna loves us, God loves us, and not blindly. That's interesting. God does not love us blindly. It's not just some sort of blind parental attachment. Krishna loves us because he sees what we really are. And in a sense, in a relationship, when we decide to stay in a relationship, of course, sannyasis know all about this, but actually, you'd be surprised. But when we decide to stay in a relationship, it's because we see the beauty of the other person. We see, in a sense, Because when you're seeing the real beauty of another person, the real goodness of another person, even if they're not always behaving properly, you're actually seeing their soul. That goodness, that beauty in another person is actually the soul. And so when you see that and you believe that there's so much value in this, there's so much good in this, that even if the person is not having their best day, but I know who this person really is. I mean, that's what parents do with children, right? Every day, every moment. That's what, the parents are seeing, that this child is really this beautiful soul. So it's, but you should love yourself by seeing yourself as Krishna sees you. But it should inspire gratitude, not vanity.
Crickets. Anyone else have a question? Did you find that, Raj?
Derailed.
There's only a few more minutes on the scoreboard clock. So. Right. Unless we go into OT, right?
Actually.
Yeah.
I got a question. It's probably a little bit of a controversial question, but I'm still going to ask a question. So what internal conflict within you led you to move in the direction of creating Krishna West?
Whoa.
Wow.
Okay. Well, lock the doors. We're going to be here all night. To be very honest, Krishna, of course, naturally, in my own uniquely humble way, I'm going to attribute everything I did to Krishna.
Maybe before you go,
Yes.
I should let everyone know what Krishna West is.
Oh, yes, of course.
Maybe you want to give us.
Sure. Hi. I'm H.D.Goswami, and Krishna West is a project. I said a movement within the movement, but some people got really unhappy with that expression. So we can call it a project within the Hare Krishna movement to make the powerful wisdom of Krishna consciousness and the powerful spiritual practice available to people in the West without making them, to be very blunt, jump through ethnic hoops. In other words, you don't have to adopt another ethnic tradition. Let's say in this case of India, there's nothing wrong with India. It's just that I wasn't born Indian. And you can say, well, we're not this body, but actually it's very interesting. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that in your human needs, he talks about this, in terms of your human needs, you should be balanced. You can't just say, well, I'm not my body, so I'm not going to eat. No, Krishna says, if you eat too much, which all of us have kind of mastered, but right? Usually most new devotees master that within the first 24 hours of joining the Hare Krishna movement, when they learn that, eating moderately and healthily is actually Maya. So anyway, so Krishna says if you eat too much or if you eat too little, you can't practice spiritual life. If you sleep too much or if you sleep too little. And then Krishna says by extension, by analogy, in all your human needs. And so one of the human needs people have, is to be accepted within society. I mean, some people like to be rebels and to stand outside society and to be very freaky and everything. Some people, that's just, what makes it all work for them. And everyone has a right to do it, I mean, it's not my business to tell somebody else how to live their life. But it's a fact that for the overwhelming majority of people, they do not want to be perceived as freaks in society. They want to be, it's not that we, crave respect, but personally, this is just me, maybe it's because I'm a second child or something, but whatever it is, personally, I got to a certain point in my life where I want to have the freedom to walk out the door of my house, walk down the street without having everybody staring at me. It's like, I'm done with everybody staring at me. I'm done with it. And of course, if I had a nickel for every obscene gesture I got, I could treat you all to I don't know, maybe one day's rent in a nice neighborhood in Los Angeles. So I was just done with it. I just, and because I think I don't think it's just because I'm chicken or something. I think it's because there are certain basic human needs. And I mean, I think there's a lot of social science behind it. Some people are happy with it, and that's I'm happy for them. There's nothing wrong if people are happy having everyone stare at them every time they walk out the door. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. It's just not me, and frankly, it's not most people. I don't want that kind of attention. The kind of attention I want actually goes back before I joined the Hare Krishna movement. In 1969, when I was home in LA for the summer from Berkeley, and I ran into the Harinam party on Sunset Strip where they were chanting. And I knew the devotees from Berkeley, and I didn't know who they were then, but it was like Vishnu Jana and Tamal Krishna and all these devotees. They were doing that. They were there was kind of like the Vedic Rockettes, the Hare Krishna chorus line. And so I stopped to chant with them, and there was a crowd watching them on Sunset. And I remember thinking, this is 69 in the summer, and I remember thinking, should I go and stand in the line and chant or stay here? And then the answer I got from within was, no, I'm going to stay here, because if normal people see that a normal person is chanting, that will do more to encourage them to also chant. And so that intuition, because the first rule of psychology is people like to be with people who are like them. Everyone has a taste for the exotic. Like, people take trips. They go to China, they go to Polynesia, they go to South America, they go to Africa, but they come home. They come home. 99.9% of Americans are not expatriates. They have not decided to live in another country, despite all the bizarre things going on in this country. 99.9% of or more of people in this country are not expatriates. And so I thought, the 60s, you have to understand something else. Prabhupada never saw the Western world under normal circumstances. Any historian of America will tell you that almost precisely the 10 years that Prabhupada was active in this country, which are 66 to 76. 1965, he was in Butler, Pennsylvania. And, it didn't take long, he realized, oh my God, I'm in Butler, Pennsylvania. And so, he realized the great Vedic glorious revolution is not going to start in Butler, Pennsylvania. So he went to New York. And so he actually started his mission in 66. And 1976 was the last time he actually came to America or the West. He went just briefly in 77 to London, trying to come back to America. He had little operations, health wasn't good, and he had to go back to India. But so Prabhupada preached in the West for 10 years. Those 10 years were completely anomalous. They were completely anomalous. Krishna opened this window. During those 10 years, one of the biggest fads in the world was Indian mysticism. The Beatles went to Rishikesh. Jimi Hendrix had a picture of Vishnu with his own face, unfortunately. On a cover, Jimi Hendrix had, the universal form on his album. Everyone had a guru. Everyone who was anyone had a guru. There was one guru, I won't mention his name, anyway. But he actually filled up the Astrodome. That's a football stadium, for God's sake. An Indian guru could fill up a football stadium. Personally, I would say that the overwhelming majority of Americans today cannot name one living guru. I used to sell books in universities. I was a young guy, I'd go there and sell books to people. And so I remember you'd go to those bulletin boards, they have all the activities announcements, all the programs going on campus. And half the board was gurus, Indian gurus. They were rock stars. That ended. It is so over. The only time, frankly, in the last several years, gurus get in the headlines now is because some Indian guru is convicted of rape and is going to jail. Really? I mean, that's probably almost the only time a Indian guru becomes a news item nowadays. So it's gone back to normal. People no longer want to, like back then, freaky was good. Everybody, all the young people wanted to be freaky. If you weren't freaky, you were freaky. I remember, for example, I was a student in Berkeley. I was actually right in the middle of all these demonstrations. My brother and myself were on the cover of the Oakland Tribune in the middle of some student riot. Actually, I have it on my computer. He sent me a digital copy of it. So, I was on Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley one time. There was a big demonstration, and I wasn't a devotee. And I'd been in so many, I just knew, the cops came, like these big monster cops with all these weapons. And I just knew, hey, it's tear gas time. And I wasn't in the mood to be tear gassed at that point. So what I did is I just turned down a side street because I just, somehow I didn't want to be tear gassed. And I turned down the street and, the canisters went off and the tear gas came out. And so I ran into a Harinam party. And the Harinam party is Mukundla, who's now a sannyas name. But so there were maybe 10 or 11 young people following him, like the Pied Piper. And not one of those 11 people was dressed in the same century. I mean, there were Elizabethan clothes and Victorian clothes and, pirates and, Far Eastern clothes. I mean, no one was even in the same part of the world or the same century. So freaky was that's the way the world was. And I don't think two of them were singing the same song. I think he was the only one chanting Hare Krishna. But I won't go into all the socio-psychological, historical reasons why the world has changed. That's another discussion. There are reasons. So nowadays, I think we have to allow people to be devotees, chant Hare Krishna, go back to Krishna, without imposing on them something which has nothing to do with the basic principles of Krishna consciousness, just a foreign ethnicity. And this comes from Prabhupada. I've written papers. I can send them to you. I have dozens of quotes from Prabhupada saying exactly the same thing. So that's Krishna West. The idea that archaic Indian clothes, which frankly, half the stuff that are called Vedic, in ISKCON, like music styles, cuisine, architecture, dress style, first of all, half of it comes from the Muslim world, which is not, nothing wrong with that, but that's just where it comes from. Half the foods we offer to Krishna in the temples, because those are the foods Krishna likes, come from Turkey. Because when you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it talks about the Pathan soldiers that Lord Chaitanya kept running into, they came from Turkey. So the Muslims rule, give one example of music. Indian classical music has been dominated for the last at least 500 or 600 years by Muslims. And yet devotees think it's Vedic. And there are reasons for that in terms of, patronage and just the way music was subsidized in pre-industrial society. So there's all these things that my point is, why don't we just give people a spiritual science and not mythology and not like this is Vedic, that's Vedic, the other thing is Vedic. And we always use this term Vedic culture. The funny thing about the term Vedic culture, it's not in the Vedas. There is no Sanskrit term which literally translated means Vedic culture. I mean, I don't want to go on and on, but if you look at how the word Vedic, and the word Vedic is in Sanskrit, Vedic. In fact, in English, we make an adjective out of a noun, Veda, Vedic. That comes from Sanskrit, where you add a K at the end of a noun and make it into an adjective. That actually is Sanskrit. And so the word for Vedic in Sanskrit is Vedika. And it's used in a completely different way in our literatures, which is another discussion. But so what I'm saying is the idea that there is an eternal absolute dress style, there are eternal absolute recipes, there are eternal absolute forms of music and architecture. Maybe there are, but there's no mention of that in any scripture. There's no scripture. There's no Vaishnava scripture that says that there is such a thing. And historically, it's all very different because India is a big place. And people that lived in jungles didn't dress the same way as people that lived way up in the mountains with the snow. And they didn't dress the same way as people that lived on the ocean or people that lived in the desert. They didn't dress the same way. They didn't cook the same food. They didn't make the same kind of music, but they were all Vaishnavas. And so I believe one of the biggest problems that is basically making it very, very difficult for this movement to be successful the way Prabhupada wanted is this idea that somehow everyone has to undergo this extreme ethnic makeover. That somehow that's what God wants of you. God will love you more if you adopt a different ethnic tradition. What Krishna really teaches in the Bhagavad Gita is the mode of goodness. Eat food in goodness. So it's so funny. So for some, very conservative devotees, if you eat Western food that's completely in the mode of goodness, that's not what Krishna wants. If you eat Indian food that's completely in the mode of passion, Krishna likes that because it's Indian. So Krishna also is a chauvinist. Yes.
I think a lot of that comes from because they take the Bhagavati song.
Yeah, but that's right.
So that's why they.
But if you look at the book,
my father-in-law, Savavati, was always glorifying sweet rice and sugar.
Well, to each his own. I mean, it's kind of like the fast track to diabetes, but it's a delicious preparation. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
But that's where the argument.
No, it's true. But here's the point: Krishna, according to our philosophy, Krishna appears in 3 dimensions, which I will explain. First of all, he's in the spiritual world. Krishna right now is in the spiritual world. Secondly, Krishna appears in human history on this earth, and he also appears in the history of other planets and other universes. So we could just say Krishna appears in the history of conditioned souls. He enters into historical context. Krishna appeared 5,000 years ago. Lord Chaitanya appeared 500 years ago. There's a third way that Krishna appears. That is, he appears in the minds and hearts of pure devotees. So when Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings that song, yes, Krishna really is eating that stuff. Or that's not stuff, it's divine food. But that doesn't mean that's what Krishna ate 5,000 years ago. And it doesn't even mean that's what Krishna is eating in the spiritual world. Or he may. Because Prabhupada said variety is a mother of enjoyment. So there's infinite variety in the spiritual world. I mean, in this world, let's say you talk about the mode of goodness. How can a woman dress? I mean, just in the mode of goodness, it's unlimited. There are unlimited ways that you can dress a man or a woman and still be decent. It's unlimited. So do we think that, when you finally get to the spiritual world, variety is a mother of enjoyment? Spiritual world, Krishna is there, who's infinitely creative. And you have unlimited souls, each one of which is inconceivably creative. With all that infinite creativity, every day go to the closet, well, I guess I'll wear my dhoti again today, because that's all that's in my closet. I mean, really? And you have a world where people are infinitely creative, and there's one kind of dress, there's one kind of, I don't think so. For example, the choli, this somewhat unfortunate cultural importation, many, many centuries ago in southeastern India, basically what is now Tamil Nadu, there was a powerful dynasty called the Chola dynasty. And they had a certain style of blouse, which became the choli. So, what is really, for example, if you look at Indian art, or even ISKCON art, Srivas in the Panchatattva is always young. He's not. He's actually much older than Lord Chaitanya. So here you have all this Indian art and ISKCON art, which is ahistorical. Or, for example, Narada Muni. Are you aware that according to the Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 70, Narada Muni is blonde? Narada Muni is blonde. And another, it's not that, this is not, I'm not getting into like Aryan racism or anything, but the point I'm trying to make is, another blonde, by the way, according to the Rig Veda, another person who's like really blonde, Lord Indra. And some people have dark hair, and some people are light-skinned, and some people are dark-skinned in the Mahabharata. So the point is, it's not India. It's, as Prabhupada says in several purports in the 4th canto, it's Indo-European civilization. For example, one person who is very light-skinned is Yudhishthira Maharaj. And some of his brothers were darker. So it's Indo-European civilization. So what I'm trying to do is, let me put it this way. Every new religious movement in recorded history that I know about, and I've studied this a long time, that became successful, that became a world religion, did what I'm trying to get ISKCON to do. And that is, it adapted to the world it was in. Didn't change its basic principles, but it adapted.
One thing I noticed is Indians don't even wear dhotis anymore.
No one. Just, it's Hare Krishna, yeah.
So it's not even an Indian thing anymore.
Anyway, so Krishna West just means people, you can become a devotee, you can go all the way back to God, go back to Krishna, and you never have to become ethnically Indian. It's very simple. And we should, okay, anyway, I've got all kinds of talking points. But, yeah, sure.
Is this in line with Prabhupada's teachings?
Yeah, I can send you a paper if you give me your email.
Sure.
I have pages and pages and pages of quotes from Prabhupada. That's another very important topic, by the way, the filtering of Prabhupada. And that is that it's not that there's just this one-to-one transmission, like Prabhupada said this and we repeat it. In some cases we do, in some cases we don't. It's very interesting. You could do a very interesting study to see which statements from Prabhupada became very popular in ISKCON and everyone knows them, and which statements didn't. So you have cases where there are things where it's not even, we can hardly document that Prabhupada ever said it, and yet everyone in ISKCON says it. Like the movement will go on for 10,000 years, or different things like, and yet there are other things that Prabhupada said constantly that no one remembers that he said it. Like for example, it doesn't matter how you dress. Prabhupada said it many times. I've documented it. These are Prabhupada quotes from his Veda base. He said it to me personally in Honolulu. He said it to me personally. Sometimes, he said one. So Prabhupada said many, many things that have been forgotten. And when you go back and you excavate all these Prabhupada statements, you get a very different picture. This picture of Prabhupada as this really strong conservative who, you can eat meat if you have to, but don't wear pants. It's, that's a joke. It's, my point is we should have the real Prabhupada in the center, the complete Prabhupada in the center of ISKCON. So I am trying to bring back into ISKCON many statements that come from Prabhupada, things that he said over and over and over again, and that everybody forgot. Because what you find is, just to give you the conclusion, the statements that tended to become popular are the ones where, for example, Prabhupada's bashing the West. Like, for example, the fact that universities, say, are slaughterhouses. That became popular. And the fact that Prabhupada said that if his devotees went to college and got PhDs so they could teach Krishna consciousness, that would save America and save the world. That America would be saved if his devotees got PhDs and taught in universities. That would save America. That didn't catch on. That didn't become a popular Prabhupada quote. But if Prabhupada once said the universities are like slaughterhouses, that's the battle cry.
It's hard to get a PhD.
There's actually, yes, well, it's nowadays, but there's actually another reason, which has to do with psychology. And that is, in the early days of the movement, first of all, America was divided. They said, don't trust anyone over 30. It was this big generation gap. So when we joined the movement and we went on the street dressed very exotically, and people were really shocked And because there was already this animosity in the country, because of the hippies and because of the radical political movements, the country was really divided, bless you, and there was tremendous animosity between basically kids and their parents. And so when we went out on the street, we were young and we were exotic and we were rejecting everything our parents taught us. We got lumped in. And so there was tremendous animosity toward us. Tremendous. When you went on Harinam back in those days, you'd get like multiple, what I call the Pakshi Mudra, which in Sanskrit means the hand sign of the bird. So, yeah, so, I mean, we had people attacking us. People would physically attack us. And so psychologically, when you live in a society and that society rejects you, humiliates you, certain things happen psychologically that you can't control. There's a whole field of psychology, which is the psychology of oppressed peoples. If you study people, whether it's racial, whether it's ethnic, whether it's because you have the wrong religion, whether it's you're a Hare Krishna, whatever it may be, when you live in a society and you perceive that the greater society or the society in general looks down upon you or ridicules you, the human mind psychologically reacts in certain ways. In a sense, you either sort of surrender to that humiliation and just kind of give up your self-esteem, or what you do is you put down the oppressor, you put down the people who are humiliating you, who are keeping you down, and you develop a whole negative outlook about them. And so in the Hare Krishna movement, because the people, really look down on us, and really the devotees developed this counterattack, frankly, for their own psychological health, you could say, or what they thought it would be. The Hare Krishna movement developed this flourishing industry of putting down the Western world, talking about how degraded it was. And even this became completely unhinged. Like, for example, I remember a time when, because the devotees always say, yes, and because it's Kali Yuga, there's more and more crime in America. At a time when crime was falling at an unprecedented rate. The crime rates were actually going down every year, and yet every Sunday in ISKCON temples, you'd hear people saying, there's more and more crime. Because we needed the world, we needed psychologically that the world that rejected us be despicable. And, or for example, why do you have this, like, frankly, this, I want to say, like, mindless thing where at a Sunday feast lecture, they'll talk about the 4 regular principles. Exactly what Prabhupada said not to do. Prabhupada wrote me a letter when I first took sannyasa and said, literally, kind of in his way, said, for the love of God, he said, when you go to the university, because I was going to universities, and Prabhupada said, do not present Krishna consciousness as rules and regulations. Do not talk about rules. He said, it's not rules and regulations, it's sublime philosophy. So why? Because at least the person giving the Sunday lecture, like, I follow the principles and you don't. So even though you may think I'm weird, I think you're weird. And it's very interesting because if you look at India, where people, millions and millions of them literally worshiped the devotees and thought, wow, this is amazing. People from the Western world adopting our culture. So therefore, the relationship between devotees and non-devotees in India was the opposite. It was exactly the opposite, because they respect us and we respect them, and everything Indian is better than everything Western. Where does this come from, this silliness? I'm not saying one is better, one is worse. I'm just saying this chauvinistic idea, which permeates, frankly, the Hare Krishna movement, that everything Indian is better than everything Western. It's because India loves us and the West, laughed at us. And therefore, you see these different psychological reactions. So there's a huge amount of psychology operating here in these, and that's why Prabhupada's statements where he puts down the West, they become the battle cries of ISKCON. And the thousands of Prabhupada statements, thousands, not hundreds, where he praises the West. Really? Did Prabhupada say that? I didn't know Prabhupada said that. And so what you have is you have kind of like this bent, this, what's a nice way? This problematic psychology, which arose out of that time because of historical circumstances, and it has become sacralized. It's become sacred, enshrined. Like that's what it means to be a devotee. That's how devotees think, and that's how we should think about the West. And so you have expressions like karmi clothes.
Yeah.
You can see the little fruits that are emanating from the fruit of it's. I mean, yeah, it gets very silly. And so my point is, Prabhupada even said, Prabhupada gave advice to the devotees who went on to Sankirtan, where he said that when you're preaching when you're trying to sell a book to an important person, he said the way you convince an important person, you have to praise them. And Prabhupada even said, say to them, oh, Mr. So-and-so, you're such a big man, Prabhupada the way to tell you're a very important man, please take this book. So for better or for worse, America is a leading country still, for better or for worse. And the point is, when people are proud and on top, and they know they're on top, you cannot simultaneously denigrate them and attract them. Unless, some people have weird psychologies, like, please hit me harder. But but if we can just kind of put aside the masochists out there. As far as normal people in this country, we cannot simultaneously denigrate them and attract them. Doesn't work. And the final thing I want to say, simple, ISKCON needs to remember its grammar school math. Because Prabhupada said, he used to say this in 66 in New York, that I came to your country, America. He said, and there's so many wonderful things here. There's so many beautiful things here. But without Krishna, they are zeros. But if you put the one of Krishna in front, it becomes a big number. Now, the zero, by the way, was invented in India. And it couldn't be modern technology with it. I mean, imagine trying to write computer code with Roman numerals. I mean, really? Oh, by the way, what did the Romans say when he walked into a bar? You haven't heard this one? He said, hey, give me 5. Anyway, sorry. So
That would work for lumberjacks.
yeah, I got it from my father. He told really corny jokes. Anyway, so I mean, imagine you have the number 1,000 written in actually Indian numerals that came from the Arabs to the Roman. We call it Roman numerals. Actually, it comes from India. But imagine you have the number 1,000. If you add a 0 to the right, that 0 has a value of 9,000. That's what Prabhupada meant when he said it becomes a big number. Because there's so many zeros. The next 0 has a value of 90,000. The next 0 is 900,000, 9 million, 90 million. That's what the zeros that Prabhupada was talking about. So there are so many great things in this country. There's so many, well, and there's also a lot of insanity, but there's so much that we could admire. Why don't you cannot stand radically outside this country and save it. You can't do that. So if you want to be radically outside of it in your in all your ethnic choices, you are not going to save this country. It's not going to happen. It's never happened in history, and it's not happening now. Every time a new religious movement actually grew and became an important religion, in every case, it's because they adapted. There's no case where they didn't adapt and they were trying to Now, the only case where you may not have to adapt is when, in sociological terms, you're coming from a prestige culture to a culture of less prestige. This is not a value judgment. It's purely mathematical. In other words, for example, how many people in the world go to see Hollywood movies and how many people see Bollywood movies? It's all Hollywood. This is not it doesn't mean that Hollywood movies are better. It's not that kind of judgment. It's just numbers. This is just numbers. And so we can look at other numbers, like, for example, international tourist destinations. Where do people go when they have a choice of going to any country? In Asia, India is in last place in terms of foreign tourism, by the way. And so we can actually, again, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with India. I'm just saying that they even have this study they do. It's a social science study, which they call national brands. In other words, when you hear of a country, Germany, Japan, Australia, Tahiti, Brazil, Nigeria, when you hear of a country, what do you think of? Like, do you admire the country? Is it a place like, I wouldn't want to go there, like, North Korea? That's not on my list. That's not on my bucket list for, So, and so when a country has more status, more prestige, it's not a value judgment. It's just the numbers. What do people think? And so at the present time, the most prestigious part of the world is the West. That's where almost all of what is called the soft power comes from. You know this term, soft power. It means hard power means basically guns, tanks, fighter jets, bombs. That's hard power in social science terms. Soft power, for example, Hollywood, the Beatles. Suddenly, England became a fad. Why? The Beatles, the Rolling Stones. No guns, no tanks, soft power. Music, movies, literature. Harry Potter, soft power. Or, for example, Mahatma Gandhi was soft power. He inspired Martin Luther King. So in terms of soft power at the present time, it's almost all in the West. Russia, for example, has sort of been resurgent militarily with Putin. That's a whole other story. But in terms of soft power, it's somewhere around zero. Russia's soft power is somewhere around zero. And so the idea of coming into a country like America, which has a tremendous amount of soft power, has tremendous status. Again, no value judgment, for good or for evil. It has a lot of status. And coming from a culture which, again, whether it's fair or unfair, not my point here, has very low status culturally, India. And thinking that you're going to culturally colonize a country of higher status. Culture is like water. It flows down. It doesn't flow up. If you're wondering why there's no water in your bathroom and the pipe is going, in the wrong direction, culture doesn't flow up. It flows down. And so in purely mechanical, mathematical, non-judgmental terms, there is not even a snowball's chance in hell that the Hare Krishna movement is going to culturally colonize the Western world. It's not going to happen. So don't hold your breath because you'll die long before it happens. And it's not happening. It's not happening. And it's not going to happen. And therefore, we need to be part of this country. If you live in this country and you want to save this country and not just go to some Sunday program and hang out with your friends, if you actually want to save this country, then we need to be part of it. It doesn't mean we eat meat. It doesn't mean we become agnostic. It doesn't mean anything like that. It means that within our own principles, within our own boundaries, we are part of the country. And we fit in. And people ask the right questions. When I go out in Harinam, I don't want people saying, why you dress like that? For two reasons. Number one, it's a superficial question. As Prabhupada said, why the hell are they asking that? And number two, there's no good answer. There's actually not a good answer.
I disagree with that, actually. Krishna wore dhotis.
We don't know that.
Goswamis wore dhotis.
Okay. Let's look at that. Thank you for bringing that up. First of all, the word dhoti is not a Sanskrit word and appears in no scripture.
Well, whatever you want to label it as, that
Well, we have no evidence of that. You see, I take seriously the fact that what Prabhupada always said, that the difference between our movement and many other movements at the time, when we were the only Gaudiya Vaishnava movement in the West, he said the difference is that we are based in Shastra. We have the Shastric authority. I take that seriously. So there is no mention anywhere. For example, we know that the gopis did not wear saris in the modern sense. We know that. And the reason is because many places in the Bhagavatam it mentions the gopis wore belts. And today, when people wear saris, the normal way today, women, they don't wear belts. We also know that women had a top cloth and a lower cloth. Whereas the sari is sort of like one cloth, which, because India is a tropical country, in many parts of India, women would wear with no undergarments. I've seen that myself. I mean, I wasn't happy to see it, but I did see it. Yeah, I mean, definitely it would only be the lower self that was happy to see it. But it was, I mean, I saw it in Mayapur. I saw it in Mayapur. These were, simple women. They were doing agricultural work. And because of the work they were doing, they're basically topless. And so, because they were just wearing a sari. And we know that way back in the day. And so we just don't have evidence of that. As far as you said, the 6 Goswamis. Okay, let's look at that. First of all, we have proof. We have proof that the 6 Goswamis did not wear dhotis. One time when I went to say goodbye to Prabhupada in Vrindavan when the festival was ending, and
So that.
I'm going to explain that. I'm going to explain the proof. First, I'm very careful in how I make my points because I want to get this right. And out of respect for your intelligence, I'm giving you a solid point. One time I went to say goodbye to Prabhupada in Vrindavan. I was going back to the West, and he just said to me that, "Do you know that song of the 6 Goswamis, Bande Rupa Sanatana?" I said, yes. He said they were the ideal sannyasis. They were actually the first Vaishnava sannyasis. I mean, the revival of Vaishnava sannyas. Because before that, even Lord Chaitanya took sannyas from an impersonal sampradaya because that was the only accredited sannyas degree at the time. And so the 6 Goswamis really inaugurated Gaudiya Vaishnava sannyas. And Prabhupada said, if you study that song, Bande Rupa Sanatano, you will understand what is ideal sannyas. And in that song, it said about the 6 Goswamis, Kopina Kantasrito. They wore kopin and rags. And if you look at the cover art of the BBT edition of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you will find that Lord Chaitanya did not wear a dhoti. He wore just a little thing. And so the point is that Prabhupada consciously rejected the sannyas dress as his own guru did, Bhaktisanta did, that was worn by the 6 Goswamis and Lord Chaitanya. Why? Because it wasn't appropriate. And because it's not something that you have to follow. For example, one time I was walking with Prabhupada, we were just the two of us on the roof in Mayapur, of the original Lotus building, and Prabhupada was just talking to me about the latest stupid criticism being made of him by some people in India. And some people are criticizing him because Lord Chaitanya walked around the country, but Prabhupada was flying on commercial jets. And I remember Prabhupada, stopped and said to me, should I be a fool and walk, or should I be intelligent and fly on the jet so I can actually preach? So if you want to dress like Lord Chaitanya, why don't you walk like Lord Chaitanya? First of all, we don't dress like Lord Chaitanya. I mean, the acharyas realized not appropriate for this age. And the only reason they dressed that way is because that's what everybody else was doing. There's absolutely no evidence that Lord Chaitanya or the 6 Goswamis were innovative. In fact, Lord Chaitanya dressed as a sannyasi the way the impersonal sannyasis were dressing because he wanted to fit in. And that's why when Sanatana Goswami came to Lord Chaitanya, and he had the kind of like that designer chadar, that fancy chadar, and Lord Chaitanya said, no, he said, throw that out and just gets like rags. And that's what he did. Why? It's not a rule. It's not an absolute rule. It's because that's what everybody else was doing. In fact, I did something which, I hope you appreciate this, that I actually looked at the Bhagavatam at every mention in the Bhagavatam, which Lord Chaitanya said is our main scripture. I looked at every mention of dress. And for example, one thing it says is that sannyasis, what it usually says is that, number one, they should go naked, which you wouldn't appreciate if I did that. But it's, especially because of my age, but it's pretty awful. But it's, the point is, there are all these, I mean, I actually compiled a list of these because I had this little debate with this other GBC sannyasi who was making these statements that I thought were a little silly. But the Bhagavatam, there are many verses in the Bhagavatam that says that, go naked, that a brahmachari should wear deer skin. It's in the Bhagavatam. Why didn't Prabhupada tell his brahmachari disciples, and in those days, most of his disciples were brahmacharinis, why didn't he tell them to wear deer skin or to go naked? It's in the Shastra.
But he did sanction the sannyas and all that, devotees and so on.
But do you know where it comes from? No, actually, you need to read my papers. There's the mythological version of Prabhupada, what he said, and there's what Prabhupada actually said.
Well, he didn't stop it. I mean, everybody.
No, but there's a statement, but in Veda base, which I quote, this is recorded, documented statement of Prabhupada. One devotee says, Prabhupada, why do you have us wear these dhotis? And Prabhupada said, it was your idea. I didn't say you had to do it. This is Prabhupada speaking. So it's very interesting how when Prabhupada makes these very liberal Krishna West type statements, so many devotees just sort of filter it out. So a big part of Prabhupada's practical instructions is systematically filtered out by many devotees, just filtered out.
Do you yourself take everything verbatim that Prabhupada said and agree with it?
I take verbatim you see, what you're talking about now is an area called hermeneutics, which is how do you rationally understand either the statements in a sacred text or a sacred authority like Prabhupada. And one thing Prabhupada said, which I take very seriously, and which you could say is a governing principle, because Prabhupada's many things, like, you have to follow the Guru, this, that, but there's a governing principle that Prabhupada said, and it's also in Shastra, that we accept Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And Prabhupada also says, and I mean, I recorded all these things. Prabhupada says, of the three, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, the central authority, the main authority is Shastra. Prabhupada was also asked point blank by H.D.Goswami, is a pure devotee infallible? Does a pure devotee know everything? And Prabhupada was like, are you serious? What kind of question is that? He said, I'm not God. Only God is infallible. Only God knows everything. So it's kind of like, it's almost like this backdoor impersonalism, where you can't say Prabhupada's God. It's okay, Prabhupada's not God, but now we'll just attribute to him all the qualities of God. He knows everything. He never makes mistakes. Prabhupada made very clear that he is only infallible, and he said this over and over again, but again, no one quotes these things, that Prabhupada is only infallible when he's repeating Shastra. If Prabhupada's giving his opinion on World War II, or let's say gendered intelligence, or whatever it may be, it's not infallible. He said it's not. So you cannot, it's actually logically impossible, which is a technical philosophical term, which I'll explain. It's logically impossible to say that everything Prabhupada said is true. Logically impossible, like, for example, a square circle.
Take it for truth. That's what I'm asking.
Well, but I'm explaining. If you don't understand these things, it's gonna be like a born again discussion. A square circle is logically impossible. If I say, for example, there's a unicorn in California, you can empirically try to verify or disprove that. You can search everywhere in California and say, I didn't see a unicorn. But if I say I saw a square circle, you don't have to go out and look for one. Because if you know what the English word square means, and if you know what the English word circle means, there cannot be a square circle. There cannot be it's logically impossible. So Prabhupada said that I make mistakes. Now, if you say I accept everything that Prabhupada says is true, you have to accept as true that he makes mistakes. But then if you say Prabhupada doesn't make mistakes, but if everything Prabhupada says is true, he doesn't make mistakes. But if he doesn't make mistakes, his statement that he does make mistakes is untrue. And so therefore what I'm saying is that I don't want to, I wasn't born in a fanatical, born-again Christian family, thank God. I mean, nothing wrong with Jesus. I have a big problem with religious fanatics. I don't care what religion it is. I have a big...
Is ISKCON operating in a fanatic?
No, but there are within ISKCON, within every Gaudiya Vaishnava, and within every religion on earth, there are people who are fanatical. And the definition of fanatical is that what you claim to be true goes beyond what you actually understand or what you can reasonably demonstrate. Because fanaticism is a psychological type. So in every group on earth, there are fanatical stamp collectors. There are fanatical biologists. There are fanatical Hindus, Muslims, Jews, Hare Krishnas. There are fanatical atheists. It's a psychological type. And every human organization on earth has a certain percentage of that psychological type. It's just like if you have a large movement, you're going to have a certain percentage of brown-eyed people, blue-eyed people, people from this country. It's just, it's statistics. So I don't like fanaticism. I actually have an aversion to fanaticism. I really dislike it.
I definitely do.
What?
I'm just trying to raise questions.
No, that's fine. No problem.
I know you're kind of against the grain, so to speak, of the main, movement.
Less and less. It depends on who you talk to. When they post, I don't personally go on the social media. I mean, I'm doing it right now, but I never personally go on it. But I just push 2 buttons and then I push the last button. But when they post things, and tens of thousands of people, devotees, not non-devotees, tens of thousands of people are following a lot of the stuff I'm doing. Tens of thousands. Now, if you live in certain parts of the world, or if you talk to certain devotees, you'll conclude that I'm the anti-Krishna. That I'm like the worst thing since, I don't know, burnt doll or something.
I have a question. Was Prabhupada stuck in the 18th century of colonial India?
No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't at all stuck. He created a powerful movement.
I'm just going to chime in for a second.
Yeah.
The time is getting.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to do
so. I mean, I know that this question and answer can go back for quite a long period of time, but in observance of everyone's schedule and perhaps tomorrow plans.
Yeah, thank you.
And for your plans as well.
Anyway, so thank you all very much. And as they say in Sanskrit, Tat Sarvang Janaha, which means in Sanskrit, that's all, folks.